This episode is brought to you by Ring cameras and doorbells. A lot happens while you're away from home. That's why Ring makes it easy to check in from anywhere. Whether you're saying hi to an unexpected guest, making sure those packages are safe, or keeping your pets company while you're out grabbing groceries. It's all a few taps away, right from your phone. Be there with Ring. Explore cameras, doorbells, alarm kits, and more right now at ring.com.
Thursday Night Football is on, and it's only on Prime Video.
Touchdown.
This week, the new-look New England Patriots take on the reloaded New York Jets in an intense divisional matchup.
What a catch.
Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Eastern with TNF Tonight, presented by Verizon. Not a Prime member? Sign up for a 30-day free trial to stream the game. It's the Patriots and Jets, Thursday at 7, only on Prime Video. Restrictions apply. See Amazon.com/Amazon Prime for details.
Thanks for listening to the Red Treehouse, where I tell scary stories to keep you up at night. You can listen to the Red Treehouse on your favorite streaming platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Be sure to follow, like, and subscribe. Oh, and leave us a 5-star review. You can follow the Red Treehouse on social media, on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at Red Treehouse Pod. And if you have a scary story or topic you'd like me to feature on an upcoming episode, email redtreehousepod@gmail.com. Content warning. This episode includes discussions about violence towards children and attempted murder. Listener discretion is advised. Sources for this episode of the Red Treehouse can be found in the show notes. For most of us, a black suit is nothing to be afraid of. A man in a black suit likely conjures thoughts of a businessman or some other professional. But what if the black suit was worn by an unnaturally tall humanoid with a featureless white head and face? And what if the humanoid had potentially retractable tentacles coming out of his back, and whose sole purpose was to snatch an unsuspecting victim? I'm guessing if you saw Slenderman, the black suit would be the least of your problems. What's fascinating about Slenderman is that despite being a modern-day boogeyman, he has only existed since 2009. We'll explore the origins of Slenderman shortly, but his popularity caught on like wildfire. In a few short years, Slenderman went from being a background figure in a Photoshop contest to a full-fledged pop culture icon with a wide variety of media depicting his long, gangly figure. He's in books, video games, movies, and more. But what makes Slenderman so scary? The fear factor is multifaceted, from his appearance, mysterious aura, and rumors of his sadistic crimes, to the actual, real-life crimes that have been perpetrated in his name. In one of the most disturbing crimes in recent memory, a tragic stabbing nearly claimed the life of a teenage girl at the hands of her closest friends. The ensuing moral panic across the United States made Slenderman the target of outrage and made him more appealing to his closest devotees, called proxies. In this episode of the Red Treehouse, we're going to explore the origins, influence, and villainy of Slenderman. Who is he? What makes him so scary? And how could he have influenced children to commit crimes in his name? I'll share the details. You decide for yourself. I'm your host, Will. Welcome to the Red Treehouse. The origins of Slenderman are surprisingly unscary. In 2009, Eric Knudsen, using the name Victor Surge, posted 2 photoshopped photographs to a competition on the web forum Something Awful. The goal was to create an idea for a modern myth that would scare people. Knudsen's submissions including a now iconic black and white photo of children on a playground. They're facing the camera, and one is climbing up the ladder of a slide. They're all seemingly unaware of the tall, shadowy figure near the tree line in the background. The second photo depicts a group of teenagers walking along a path. In the background, hidden in shadows, is Slenderman, and it looks like he's chasing them. To add to the realism, Knudsen captioned each of the photos. The caption under the first photo read, quote, "We didn't want to go. We didn't want to kill them. But its persistent silence and outstretched arms horrified and comforted us at the same time." 1983, photographer unknown, presumed dead. End quote. The caption under the second photo read, quote, "One of 2 recovered photographs from the Sterling City Library blaze, notable for being taken the day which 14 children vanished, and for what is referred to as the Slender Man. Deformities cited as film defects by officials. Fire at library occurred 1 week later. Actual photograph confiscated as evidence. 1986, photographer Mary Thomas. Missing since June 13th, 1986. End quote. Knudsen's intent for Slenderman was, quote, "something whose motivations can barely be comprehended, and which caused unease and terror in a general population." End quote. The mythology surrounding Slenderman quickly picked up traction, and though he was born in 2009, he is thought to have been in existence for centuries. In Scotland, he's known as the Dark Man. In the Netherlands, he's known as the Branch Man. In Germany, he's known as the Tall Man. Cave paintings in northeast Brazil, dating back to 9000 BC, show a tall, elongated character leading a child by the hand. Egyptian hieroglyphs, dating back to 3100 BC, reference the Thief of the Gods, which is depicted as a strange figure with multiple upper limbs. German wood carvings, dating back to the early 1880s, show a skeletal, multi-limbed character. And English mythology speaks of a tree man who is said to have a slim body with appendages that look like tree branches. So much of what makes Slenderman scary is his mystical aura. He can be anywhere and nowhere, and you never know when or where he will show up. It is said that he is found in the woods and preys on children, and many photographs show him amongst large groups of children, and it is rumored that he kidnaps them and kills them, even though no one knows why. We often think of the boogeyman hiding in the shadows, under the bed, and coming out at night. But Slenderman isn't fazed by appearing in the middle of the day. The Slenderman wiki states, quote, "Slenderman is usually said to dwell in forests, but once he has a target, he will basically appear in any abandoned location, run-down buildings, isolated apartments, and ghost towns. He'll also show up wherever he needs to be to take down enemies or destroy evidence his proxies cannot get to themselves." End quote. One article reported, quote, "It is said that he is generally docile until his face is seen, at which point the viewer is immediately, quickly, and brutally attacked." End quote. Anxiety sometimes leads to hypervigilance, which is defined as the elevated state of constantly assessing potential threats around you. Unfortunately, obsessing over Slenderman and being paranoid about running into him won't keep you safe, because he feeds on your paranoia and is more likely to show up. He preys on your attention, and the only way to keep safe is to stop paying attention to him altogether. Slenderman sightings are innumerable at this point, with new testimonials popping up almost daily. You might think to yourself, if Slenderman is a fictional character created in 2009, how can people report seeing him in the real world? You'd be surprised with the number of supposed Slenderman sightings and videos that have popped up all over the internet. A Thought Catalog article dated January 9th, 2018, detailed more than a dozen of them. Here are a few of the scariest. The first Slenderman story states, quote, "I was introduced to Slenderman a few months ago when some guy wanted to pull a prank on my friend. He asked for my help, but I didn't follow along and just left. He wanted to scare my friend with a Slenderman costume. I looked up the Slenderman and read through the mythos, ignoring the "do not look too deeply into the legend or he will find you" warnings. I loved the story and everything, but I was a little uneasy that night. I thought I might be psyching myself out, but then weird things started happening. My parents said I will be awake and talking to them for hours before I actually wake up. They said I do things I didn't do, like make tea. I see it as half empty and I wonder if they have told the truth. My parents are honest people and I believe them, but this has to be impossible. A couple of nights ago, I felt like I was being watched, and uncharacteristically I looked out the window and saw a flash of white and black. That night, I had a dream. I drew on a sheet of paper what I saw in the dream, and I remember drawing this, and I'm glad I did, because otherwise, I would have forgotten." End quote. The second Slenderman encounter states, quote, "This happened at about the time I was 4 or 5. Like any other little kid, I would get scared of most things. But this one time scared me more than any other. After a normal day in the life of a kindergartner, I went to sleep at about 10 o'clock or so. Half the time, I either forget my dreams or just don't dream at all. Tonight was not one of those nights. After drifting off to sleep, I began to have a very weird dream. I saw myself walking down a long, narrow, dark corridor, with light only coming from a door at the very end. I slowly walked through the hallway to the room, which was very bright, and the entire room seemed to be covered in white. I walked into the room, but there was nothing to explore in there. And as I'm about done looking in this room, I turned around back to the door to go into the corridor again. But this time, there's a man standing there. I see his long, black business suit, and I start looking up closely. Red tie, I think to myself, and eventually, I look at his face. Except there is no face. I was looking at a white orb with a neck wearing a business suit, standing almost 8 feet tall. Like any normal kid, I start to scream. The scream rips me away from the dream back into real life. I'm sweating, and my heart is racing. I look towards the clock to read 12:57 a.m. My dad opens the door to my room, and when he comes in and asks what's wrong, I claim I saw a stick man. End quote. The third Slenderman encounter states, quote, "Something very strange happened to me last night. Something I still can't quite understand. It was about 9:59 p.m. when it happened. It was about time for me to be getting to bed, so I took my 10-year-old mutt Daisy out for her last bathroom break for the night. I've been having problems with mild slender sickness lately, namely nausea, severe headaches, and extreme paranoia. So I knew he'd be following me again. As I stood in the strip between the fence of the next-door neighbor's fence and my own front door, I watched Daisy trot off into the dark. Then, the wait set in. I knew he was watching me, but I couldn't tell from where. I had my back to the street for a few seconds as I tried to pinpoint my observer's position. Then I remembered where I saw him last time. He had stood beneath the street lamp across from my home, which was directly behind me. I turned around to see him there watching me. I froze, just as I had last time, and bit the inside of my cheek to keep from screaming. My mother was still inside and awake, so I couldn't call out and draw her away from safety. I felt my eyes go wide as panic shot through me like a lightning bolt. My muscles coiled, and my heart began racing. I stood like this for maybe 5 or 10 seconds before I blinked. What happened next was a little too much for me to comprehend. In the split second it took for me to open my eyes, he had suddenly crossed the street, come into my tiny strip I was standing in, and stood only inches from me. In my coiled state, I was mildly surprised after turning this over that I didn't jump backward. Still, there he was, hunched over, face level with mine. The weight of his eyeless gaze had me locked in place, and then it happened. My eyes were drawn to a bit of motion near the lower right of my vision. A pale, thin hand drew up. His icy fingers grazed downward across my face. The feeling was one I could only describe as cold. Mind you, it was April in Tampa, Florida. What I felt was his fingers, because it was too warm outside to be anything else. I closed my eyes tight, expecting to wake up to the sight of the pearly gates. But when I opened them, all I saw was the light across the street. Daisy trotted up behind me and gave a small yip, then jumped up on my legs as though hugging me. She did that whenever she was ready to go inside. It was over. Just like that. My questions now are, why? Why would he want to touch me? He had a perfect opportunity to take me, but he didn't. Why not? Does this touch mean anything? Please. I'm really scared. And I have no clue what's going to happen to me, or worse, those around me. End quote. Equally as terrifying as seeing Slenderman are encountering his proxies. The Slenderman wiki defines proxy as, quote, the term given to those who serve the Slenderman, end quote. Proxies can be people or entities who are under the influence and control of Slenderman and carry out his desires. It is widely believed that proxies do the actual work for Slenderman, where he often stays lurking in the shadows. Proxies are scary, because unbeknownst to them, Slenderman is manipulating them to do his dirty work. Many lose their personality while under his control, and often adopt a personality completely opposite of their normal one. And this may be one of Slenderman's methods for blocking their memory and keeping them from figuring out who they really are. Within the larger Slenderman universe, the proxies are categorized into one of 5 ranks, from lowest to highest. The first rank is Hallowed, and these are puppets created by Slenderman to harass others. The second rank are the Berserkers. These are slaves to Slenderman who have a remnant of their own will and have superior knowledge and problem-solving capabilities. The third rank are Sleepers, and these proxies have their original personality intact, but are unaware of their role as a proxy. The fourth rank are Agents. These proxies are considered cultists who worship Slenderman. In the fifth rank are the Revenants. These are proxies with superhuman strength and regenerative capabilities. Clearly, this is all fun and games, right? A harmless way for people to indulge in their otherworldly fantasies and give themselves a good scare, no? For most people who love Slenderman, that's exactly what it is. Nothing more than an appreciation for the mythos and lore. But for some, the line between horror fantasy and reality was smashed into a million pieces, with real-world, real-life consequences. Perhaps none are more terrifying than the case of Anissa Weir, Morgan Geyser, and Peyton Leutner. I'm going to tell you this story backwards. In 2017, then 15-year-old Anissa Weir pleaded guilty to attempted second-degree intentional homicide. As part of her plea deal, a jury would hear her defense and ultimately determine whether she was criminally responsible for the attempted homicide and sent to prison, or if she would be declared not guilty by reason of mental disease and sent to a state mental institution. The jury eventually found her not guilty and sentenced her to 25 years in a state institution. Weir's friend, 15-year-old Morgan Geyser, pleaded guilty to first-degree intentional homicide and was given a 40-year sentence in a state institution. Their crime? In 2014, in Waukesha, Wisconsin, Weir and Geyser, who were 12 years old at the time, followed through on a plot to kill their friend, 12-year-old Peyton Leutner, also known as Bella. The day after the three girls celebrated Morgan Geyser's birthday with a sleepover, Weir cheered Geyser on as she stabbed Bella 19 times. Weir and Geyser plotted for weeks, and the actual stabbing incident was the third plan. According to Weir, Geyser suggested they duct tape Leutner's mouth while she was asleep, so they could stab her in the neck. When that plan failed to materialize, the two girls woke up the next morning and devised their second plan, stabbing Bella in a bathroom stall at a local park. They chose this location because the bathroom floor had a drain for the blood. As the girls headed out, Geyser snuck a 5-inch kitchen knife into her bag. After arriving at the park, the three girls went into the bathroom, where Weir attempted to knock Bella out by banging her head against the concrete wall. When this didn't work, the two girls lost their nerves, abandoned this plan, and left the bathroom. Weir then suggested taking Bella into the woods to kill her. After tricking Bella into thinking they were going birdwatching, and then suggesting a game of hide-and-seek, Geyser counted while Weir and Bella hid. After a few seconds, Weir screamed, "Go ballistic! Go crazy! Make sure she's down!" Morgan Geyser described what happened next. Quote, "Stab, stab, 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 stab. It was weird. I felt no remorse. I thought I would. I actually felt nothing." End quote. After the stabbing, Weir and Geyser calmly walked away from the scene, leaving Bella on the ground bleeding and fighting for her life. Miraculously, Bella made it to the end of a dead-end road, where a passing bicyclist discovered her and called police and emergency medical personnel. Bella was rushed into surgery and thankfully survived the horrific attack. One of the stab wounds missed an artery by 1 millimeter, and that likely saved her life. Approximately 5 hours after the stabbing, Anissa Weir and Morgan Geyser were found sitting on the side of the highway. they'd spent most of those 5 hours walking. The girls were immediately brought in for questioning and charged as adults the next day. In September 2021, just over 7 years after the stabbing, Anissa Weir was released from the Winnebago Mental Health Institute and will serve the rest of her sentence in the community. She will be monitored and be required to check in with case managers until 2039, when she will be 37 years old. As of August 2023, Morgan Geyser is still serving her 40-year sentence at Winnebago Mental Health Institute. If she completes her full 40-year sentence, she will be released in 2057, when she will be 55 years old. Peyton Leutner has since made a full recovery, is attending college, and is said to be doing very well. The details of the case are chilling, as are Weir and Geyser's interrogation recordings, which you can find online. To this point, I've only shared what happened, but it still leaves us with this question. Why did Morgan Geyser and Anissa Weir try to kill their friend, Peyton Leutner? Upon separating the girls at the police station, detectives began interviewing Morgan and Anissa. Unsure of what to expect, detectives were stunned to hear Morgan Geyser state, quote, "I might as well just say it. We were trying to kill her." End quote. When pressed for more details, Geyser explained the attack was done to satisfy, quote, "whoever Anissa was talking about. She made it seem necessary. Anissa told me we had to because she said that he'd kill our families. A man. I didn't know him, but Anissa knew him." End quote. Thinking this had something to do with jealousy over a boy, detectives were even more stunned to discover the man was Slenderman. During her interrogation, Weir stated, quote, "There was one of them called Slenderman. He can be anywhere from 6 to 14 feet tall. He's, like I said, a tall guy who constantly wears a suit. He doesn't have a face. His skin is white." End quote. Weir commented that Slenderman targets children and went on to detail an encounter she had with him. Quote, "I thought that he was real because I saw him. We were like talking on the bus. I look out the window and I see this thing standing like this with tendrils, like exactly like a tree. There and gone like that. I was really scared, knowing that Slenderman could easily kill my whole family in 3 seconds." End quote. While undergoing a psychiatric evaluation, Morgan Geyser was diagnosed with early onset schizophrenia, a rare diagnosis for someone her age. And it was further reported that she had been having visual hallucinations since she was 3 years old. Detectives learned Anissa and Morgan were terrified of Slenderman coming for them and their family, and they desired to become his proxies. Killing someone close to them would prove their worth to Slenderman, and he would take them to live in his Slender Mansion, located in the Nicollet National Forest, nearly 300 miles from their home in Waukesha. For 6 months, they plotted and planned, even developing their own coded language to keep anyone from finding out what they were up to, until that terrifying day in May 2014. There's no doubt that Slenderman is scary, and if you thought he was really coming after you, you'd likely be terrified. But make no mistake, human monsters are infinitely scarier than made-up monsters. When the line between fantasy and reality is smashed, the consequences can be disastrous and tragic. As we close this episode of the Red Treehouse, we're still left with these lingering questions. What would compel children to commit crimes in the name of a fictional boogeyman? And how do we prevent the next tragedy from ever happening? I've shared the details. Now you decide for yourself. I'm your host, Will. Thanks for joining me in the Red Treehouse.